Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Heavy Repping. My name is John Tron Davidson, and I'm here once again in our super mega best secret test location in the southwest of England. So one of the things you'll probably have noticed is that a lot of the picks that I cover on the channel are quite dense. We're talking like 3mm plus, stuff like this, for example. But not all picks are gigantic, and not all boutique picks, especially, are gigantic. So today I thought what I'd do is show you 5 different examples of thin picks. Now when I say thin, I'm talking under like a millimetre and a half. I was going to do under 2mm, which means I could bring in a couple of other things, but in the interests of common sense, and because a lot of players play things like the Dunlop 73, I have elected to go under a millimetre. So I'm going to take you through each one of those picks in turn. We've got all sorts of really interesting stuff today, so I hope you will enjoy it. Just remember, if you would like to like, share and subscribe, particularly to subscribe and like the video, it allows me to grow the channel a little bit more, and although I will continue to produce the best content I can, I would like to share it with as many of you as possible, so do that. I would very much appreciate it. Let's go. So I'm going to go through the picks in turn, and we're going to be starting with the thinnest one first. Now, I'm going to be using my Sigma OM21R today, and the reason for that is because the best application I've found for thin plectrums is for strumming, and so I'm going to be doing a lot of that and less in the way of single note work, though I'll do a little bit to give you an idea as to how they behave. So, without further ado, let's begin. So this is the Fender Tortuga Medium. Now this is made from Ultem, which is quite an unusual material to go this thin. I'm normally used to seeing Ultem in the likes of the Jazz 3 XL and a lot of the stuff from companies like Windspear and Iron Age. But it tends to go into thicker plectrums. It's a very hard material. It's also, according to the internet, Ultem is quite commonly used in bone reproduction. If you're 3D printing replacement bones like finger bones and all that sort of stuff, Ultem's quite commonly used for that. So of course it makes total sense that it goes into picks. However, the beauty of this is that you still get a thin flexible plectrum, but it's got a much bigger sound than you would get from Delrin or celluloid, because the material is much more dense, and also it'll take a lot longer to wear down. So let's hear how she sounds. So this little thing is the Piglet 2, and it's actually made by a company called Polyspectrum, who make a whole load of stuff, who are from Australia. And this is made from nylon. Now they do a Delrin version as well, but I thought I'd focus on the nylon one today. Now this has a very thin tip, which is about 0.5, but I wanted to include it because I'm not a massive fan of the Dunlop Red, even though I know a lot of people do like them, which is neither here nor there from either end. But I like the fact that this has got a bit more mass at the top for you to hold on to. It's been designed primarily for rhythm work, and it's got quite a brash sort of sound to it, which I quite like. And it's also got, and I will try and show this in the picture, it's got contoured grooves on the front and back for you to get a grip of, so it doesn't slide about. And actually these are rather nicely made. He does quite a large line of them, including polycarbonate and all the rest of it, which I will come to in other videos. But today let's have a look at the Piglet 2 nylon. This is the Coarse pick. Now this is an unusual one in the sense that this is the only type of pick that this company makes. It's made from a proprietary material which is based on fingernails, and the way that Jonathan came up with this was that he heard from a lot of players that their nails were a sound they liked but didn't like actually playing with them, because that's kind of gross unless you are a flamenco player, in which case it makes total sense. But having fingernails on steel strings is a lot of people don't like it. So he attempted to correct that by creating this. It actually has two different ends, so you've got a polished side and then a side that's based off 165 grit sandpaper. So the idea behind that is that you have two different tonalities that you can choose from. I personally prefer the rough side of it, but the shiny side has its benefits as well. And what I particularly like about this is that these are quite cheap and they come in a little metal tin. It's the little things. In terms of presentation, it's one of my favourites that I've ever received from a company. So yeah, let's check it out. This is the Gempix Dual, and this is made from PVC. It also clocks in at 0.9 of a millimetre, and it's got these little foil strips on the front of it. Now, I'm currently doing an interview with Nick from Gempix, and I love the fact that he's chosen PVC as a material. It's a very unusual choice, but as I wrote about these before in a review that you can read in the description, to think what it was called there, there's a certain tonal quality that goes along with these. They don't have beveling, so normally when you get picks, they've got, at some point, even with stuff like this is a Mathas Junior 2mm, it's got a certain roundedness to the edges. These picks do not have that. It's more or less a straight edge, and there's a certain kind of gauche sort of quality to it, but I've always really liked that, and it's more noticeable in this one because it's pointed. This is kind of their Jazz 3 variation, but it's a cracking sounding thing all the same. And I have to say, although I would never have thought it, the grip is superb. So let's have a little listen to this thing and see how we go. Tutto bene, this is the Plectro Thin. This is made from corn maize, and it's 3D printed, which you'll probably be able to see in the picture up there. This one also says heavy repping on the back of it, and this is one of their earliest prototypes. Now, they've actually gone into different incarnations since then, but what I really want to do with this was show you the tonal properties of corn, which isn't something I ever thought I would get an opportunity to say before, during, or after heavy repping. The thicker version of this sounds tremendous, I have to say, and I suppose it's one of those things where you would never think in a million years that this would work. And genuinely, when I heard about it, I was like, but as they say, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. And once I had a chance to really get down with this, especially on acoustic, there's very little string noise. It's got loads and loads of body to it, an oddly high level of clarity, and once it wears down and becomes unusable, you can then send it back to Plectro and they'll use it to make more picks. What's more sustainable than that? Nothing. So, in the interest of science, let's have a listen. So what have we learned from this little exercise? Well, one of the most important things about thin picks and why they're so good for strumming is that if you're constantly playing like this, and obviously as we get carried away in a live setting or even in a studio setting we play harder and harder, it means that if you were using a really heavy pick and constantly playing like this and playing all 6 strings, you get what's called transfer, and transfer is like a vibration transfer up the wrist from where you're striking. So if you think of it a little bit like a shock absorber, if you were to play a really heavy plectrum and constantly be thumping into the strings, especially on acoustic where you're dealing with a higher mass of string, like 12s and 11s and so on, and also being made of bronze, they're much heavier density. Every time you hit, you're getting a vibration from the pick itself, and that's going up your arm. Now if you want to test this or see what I'm talking about, if you play for an extended period of time just strumming, janga, 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 what you'll get is you'll get all that vibration going up your arm, and you'll start to feel tired round here. There'll be a sort of very noticeable ache, and you'll get it particularly around this part of the wrist. Now this is where you have problems with RSI and all the rest of it, and if you're very unlucky, carpal tunnel. And using a thin pick can prevent that, but also if you are constantly playing rhythm and constantly doing this, having a lighter pick means you'll go through the strings a lot easier, and you'll be able to move at a higher speed if you're playing chords as a whole. If you're doing single note work, you'll notice that having a thicker pick makes a much bigger difference, because you're having to use, you have a very high mass, and that's making individual notes pop out a lot more. I do like a thick plectrum for doing, or thicker plectrum for doing chord work, round about the sort of 1 to 2 mil area. My preferred sort of size is about, in all honesty, is about 2.5 to 3 millimeters. That's just my personal preference, because I've actually got quite a slack right hand. If you are really heavy-handed, then having a heavy pick will just knacker your wrists really badly. If, however, you're somebody who likes to do economy picking, or you don't actually play all that hard, having a heavier pick can make a massive difference, because the more pick you have, the less physical effort you'll have to put in if you want to make your guitar do stuff. If, on the other hand, you're somebody who, let's say you're, as is quite often the case, let's say you're a rhythm acoustic player in a band or a rhythm electric player, if you're using a heavy pick, you're just merking away at this thing all the time, and you'll just find that it'll just sound a bit hard, and it'll be hard on your wrists. If you use a thinner pick and you're constantly strumming, you're playing all 6 strings, then you'll find it less painful, less difficult over time. Each one of the picks that I showed you today has its own tonal qualities. Some of them are brighter than others, some of them have greater depth than others, and as you'll notice, if we go up through the thicknesses, there is an increase in body and strength. I'd say on balance, out of the whole lot, then the Coarse is probably my personal favourite, because I like a bit of that sort of scrape as I'm going in, but each one has its own merits, and each one will deliver a slightly different sound depending on what you want to achieve. So the best way for you to test that is to go and get some yourself. The beauty with thinner picks is that they tend not to cost as much as their thicker counterparts, because simply there is less involved and there's less hand shaping and little detail bits with the beveling and all that, because the thinner you go, the less chance you have of making a bevel, simply because there isn't enough material to work with. That's not to say that thin picks don't have bevels, they're just much more slight than you get on thicker plectrums. So with that in mind, hope you enjoy the video, and I'll be back next week with some more plectrology. I'm going to be doing the 5 best looking plectrums that I have, so stay tuned for that, as they say. In the meantime, do check out all the companies, they are listed below in the description. Go to heavyrepping.com for all sorts of interviews, reviews, articles and more. Follow us on Instagram at heavyrepping, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe to this video and the channel as a whole. In the meantime, my name is John Davidson, this is Heavy Repping, and I shall see you very soon. Don't forget, if you're not sure what to do, rep hard, rep heavy.